So the recording is on now, and my first question that I have for you would be, what does leadership mean to you?
That's a really important question. And I guess for me, stepping out on your principles and on what you think is important, both in terms of thinking critically, acting decisively, and speaking on the issues that you most care about and that you think are most important for you and for your society. That would be leadership.
Wow, so I hear you say acting decisively.
Thinking critically, speaking decisively on the issues, having done your research, and then acting on those conclusions that you've come to based on your thoughtful analysis of the situation.
Yeah. Wow. What would be your leadership values?
Number one, it has to be courage, because when you put yourself out there, you start to be a target, right?
Yeah.
So whether it was the anti-nuclear movement I was involved in the 80s, or the anti-pesticide work that I've done in Calgary in the 90s, some people get upset when you push a particular direction, and it takes courage to continue to say what you think is right and take criticism, and in some cases lose friends over positions that you take. So that's where the courage comes in. Other values like honesty. You can't spill everything all at once, of course, but you've got to be honest about what you think and what your evidence shows and where and why you think we should be going in a certain direction. So honesty about what you know and what you believe. Humility to some extent, and that's not a very common thing in many leaders. Humility, to recognize that we don't know it all, that we have lots of areas of development still needed as people, to be open to new evidence, open to new ideas, and not to be dogmatic, but to be humble about your knowledge and what you're able to bring to the table. Wow. Those would be three major values: courage, what was the second one? Honesty and humility. Those would be important to me.
Yeah.
Every leader probably has a few different priorities, but those have been important to me.
What would you say helped you discover these values?
Pain. By remaining silent when I should have spoken up, by watching human suffering or experiencing suffering myself. But as a physician, I used to see lots of people who are suffering from neglect, from programs that weren't helping them, from self-inflicted wounds because they had mental illness or poverty for whatever reason. And there's nothing like pain, either your own or others, to help you to see that you can't just stand by. You either have to get involved and try and make things good for yourself and others. And it's connected, because if you don't take care of other people, they're not going to take care of you, right?
Yeah.
So it is all connected. But pain has been psychological pain I'm talking about here. Because when you see somebody suffering and it's not necessary, it's deliberate maybe by somebody, or it's neglect by a government or a parent, then you're moved to do something, say something, to take action. And it's taken that to move me into the political realm, which I was terrified of. I wanted nothing to do with politics. Medical practice was good, it was interesting, it was satisfying, I was helping people. Yeah. I didn't want to be in politics, but the pain I saw was not being fixed by medicine. It needed to be fixed by better policy, more integrity in government, more honesty about what the evidence showed, less blaming people for the problems, and recognizing that our whole society has some very unhealthy features to it that is contributing to human suffering and environmental degradation and even economic threats that we could prevent if we got our act together and started to realize that if we don't start taking care of each other and the planet, everything is going to decline.
Mm-hmm.
And that means thinking, speaking, acting on the issues that you see in front of you. Not just treating the symptoms. This poor soul has an addiction. This poor soul is overweight. This poor soul isn't able to learn at school. This couple is fighting. Instead of saying they're the problem, they need to fix themselves, recognize that we're part of a society, that if we help each other, we will all benefit, and the society will be less costly, our services will be less costly, we won't have so many jailed, we won't have so many in hospital, we won't have so many on the street. We can reduce the suffering and the cost to our society if we actually recognize that each of us has a role to play in speaking about it, thinking about it, acting on it. It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
We're human beings. We see problems. If we don't say something about it or try and do something about it, we're all going to pay a price, whether it's a financial price or a personal price. At some time, nobody there for me, but I wasn't there for anybody else. So, sorry, that's the kind of society you've contributed to.
Yeah.
So that's the essence in which I got involved in politics, even though I didn't really choose or want to be in politics. I saw more and more problems, more and more suffering, and I spoke out on climate issues. I don't know if you're aware of that. Climate issues, 2002. Government wasn't doing anything, didn't even acknowledge that climate change existed, and I was fired a few days later as a medical officer in southern Alberta, and realized that, well, I could go and find another job somewhere else, but the bigger problem here was a government that didn't respect democracy, free speech, and a government that didn't respect science, the science of climate change.
Yeah.
So if I just walk away and go and get another job as a doctor, I'm not being a responsible citizen and I'm not a responsible parent to the kids who are going to inherit this mess, inherit a government that doesn't respect free speech and doesn't respect science. That is not something a responsible adult should allow to happen. So I dived in, and people in this constituency said, we want change. We recognize what you do, Swann, that this guy isn't really speaking and acting on our behalf, so we're going to change this. And I got a lot of support that first time I ran for election in 2004, 2 years after I was fired.
Wow. So turnaround.
Yeah.
Huge turnaround.
It was, in some ways, but my party hasn't done that well. I'm the last standing Liberal, and there's so many factors, though, on how you get elected, whether you get elected, what kind of donations you get, what kind of communications skills you have. I probably should have done Toastmasters. I probably should have done some training in debate. I probably should have done more consulting about how to build a party, and things might have been different. So there's so many variables around particular party success or political success. But I'm quite satisfied that I did what I could do, and people now are going to have to take over. A new leader here, the Liberals, and people are going to have to step up in all the 87 ridings in this province and offer themselves to be candidates so that we can have a government that better represents the people. That's just the nature of democracy.
Mm-hmm. I heard like I can see like the common theme of what you're talking about is suffering and pain. That's what I hear often.
I think that's what has moved me.
Yeah.
If I didn't see suffering and pain, if I didn't experience some suffering and pain myself in my own life, it's hard to change because everything's cool. Successful medical practice, good family, life is good. Why would I change? Well, I change because I see that it's not good for many people, and in some cases I have to experience my own suffering to realize I have to change.
Yeah.
My relationship with my wife isn't what it should be. I need to change. My relationship with my boss isn't what it should be. How can I fix that? My relationship with my community isn't there, and I don't think it's as safe a place as I want it to be, so I better get involved with my community. Those kinds of threats or pain, I guess, suffering, if you want to put it that way, are what human beings seem to need to move out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because if we're comfortable, why would we change? That's the
Yeah.
sort of
True. Was there someone in your life that taught you about leadership? Told you how?
I suppose, yes, and I'm thinking of some of the great leaders of the world. Gandhi has always been an inspiration to me. Nelson Mandela. I worked 3 years in South Africa when I was just a new graduate of medicine. So I knew a lot about South Africa and heard about Mandela and read about him and have since then seen how he has contributed tremendously to our thinking about leadership. One church leader in the city inspired me. He was always working in inner city and with the poor and speaking out on issues. And so there are various people, whether local or national or global. Pierre Trudeau inspired me. Part of the reason I'm a liberal is Pierre Trudeau. So many different examples of leadership, spiritual leadership, leadership on the international stage on nuclear weapons. I've told you about some folks that have spoken out on that.
Yeah.
So many different people have different dimensions of leadership that I admired, and then I hope I have tried to embody those. Yeah.
What would be your common challenges as a leader?
Dealing
You
with
personally experienced.
Yeah, well, fear of sounding stupid, doing something stupid, offending my friends, my family, my party. So certainly that's a challenge. You have to somehow satisfy your own conscience when you're speaking, be true to yourself. You're also trying to represent 42,000 people here that elected me.
Yeah.
And 3,000 people in my party that say, this is what we stand for. So there's tensions between those three, my conscience, the electors, and my party. Sometimes conflicts there. How do I resolve that? Some people want me to support a new election act. Some people don't want me to support that new election act. Some people want me to support oil sands development. Some people don't want me to support oil sands development. That tension creates certainly some anxiety and fear of offending, fear of losing my support as a leader.
Yeah.
That would be one. Another fear I have is of not offending anybody. If I don't offend anybody, then what am I doing? Just trying to please everybody, tell everybody what they want to hear, and try and be popular and re-elected. That's a terrible position to be in. So.
That's interesting.
Another challenge is asking for money. I don't like asking people for money. But you don't have a party if you don't ask for money.
I just want to let you know you're doing
Thanks. I'm not good at asking for money, but that's part of the leadership. Another challenge is my family. They say I'm never home, and they're upset about that. So how do I balance my home life with my political life?
Yeah.
And then, if I get too involved in those and I don't take care of myself, exercise every day, eat well, take some quiet time, spiritual time, then I don't stay well myself. And ultimately that's a problem. So that's a challenge, finding that life balance, work-life balance.
Yeah.
Those are some of the challenges I face.
I find it interesting how you talk about like not offending, being pushed and pulled in certain ways. How do you balance that? How do you balance that?
It's different on every issue. I mean, if somebody told me that you have to vote against the carbon tax, I'd say no.